Welcome to MOBE Mondays.
Good evening. My name is Yvette Moyo, and you've arrived at MOBE, Marketing Opportunities in Business and Entertainment. And this evening, we have a show that's very, very dear to my heart. Some of you may know that MOBE is actually presented by the nonprofit Real Men Charities. And Real Men Charities grew out of a Father's Day event that is now 32 years old. And that event was created, Real Men Cook, to use food as a hook to alert our audiences and actually media audiences to the fact that they were overlooking a segment of Black men who were committed fathers, who had committed fathers, or they were father figures, very, very committed to their families and communities, men who serve, men who love. And so today, so that nonprofit, Real Men Charities, also has an educational arm at a very high level, a national level, which is MOBE. And but it grew from our Real Men Cook roots. Everything started with those roots 32 years ago, and MOBE's 29 years ago. So now you have some history on where MOBE, Marketing Opportunities in Business and Entertainment, came from. Because this Father's Day tribute is actually entertainment. And there is a business opportunity available as well. But we're not going to talk about that tonight. What we're going to talk about is, we're going to talk with some people that have been very much a part for all the 32 years that we have been engaged with our activities to dispel the myth and actually reveal what we call the invisible Black man, because he's basically been deemed invisible by the media. Every time we see a news report or someone attempting to mention what the ills are of our communities, we hear about the absent African American male, but we don't hear about the challenge that structural racism has put before the male for 4 generations, 5 generations, and more ever since slavery, to decrease the value of the Black male. And a lot of what has happened over the years and predictions of the obsolete Black male, or the conspiracy to eliminate the Black male, some of it has become true. I have my own opinions because I've been doing this for 32 years, and I'm very much committed to the love that I think has been missing, the love story that's been missing from our lives that I have a love story about my dad and the men, all of the men in my family as fathers. And so hopefully tonight you'll hear some more love stories. You'll love what we're saying, what we're doing, and you'll also perhaps join us on Father's Day for a virtual event. All you need to do is look up Real Men Charities or Real Men Cook on the internet and find out what we're going to do on Sunday, which is Father's Day. But with that, I'm going to introduce you to our moderators, and I will fade out and listen to this most interesting conversation, the value of the Black father. The first individual that I'd like to introduce is a real man, and he is one of our original real men, meaning that he was in that very first Real Men Cook event with personalities like Congressman Danny Davis, who at that time was an alderman, with Senator Emil Jones, which at that time was not in the position of a senator. Stedman Graham was one of our original real men, little known Black history fact. And there is then Mr. Darryl Dennard, who is very, very well known and respected throughout the country for many years as an expert in African American media, news, and production. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Darryl Dennard first, who's one of our moderators. And it looks like I know this man very well, but I want to make sure I get in all of the fine points. He is Double D Productions is his production firm, and it's a full service video, media, and public relations and marketing company specializing in turnkey communication solutions. With more than 2 decades of experience, Double D Promotions has established a unique niche among its competition as highly effective, cost-conscious communicator of ideas from concept to completion. Darryl Dennard is a face and voice familiar to television viewers and radio listeners everywhere. He's an award-winning broadcast journalist, and his news anchoring talents are heard weekly with iHeartMedia's WVAZ FM, WGCI FM, and WGRB AM Community Affairs programming. He is the host and producer of Chicago's Insight and Chicago Speaks, and Chicagoland's #1 rated radio program, airing live on Sundays from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. His producing on-camera skills were most recently viewed every week in tens of million homes via Black Enterprise Report. Prior to the Black Enterprise Report, he was co-producer of the Minority Business Report, the nation's longest running television program dedicated to minority business. His news and marketing experience has him in demand as a moderator, as a public and as a public speaker. And again, he is owner of Double D Productions, and that is Mr. Darryl Dennard, one of the original real men. Yay, Darryl!
I use as a timestamp in terms of Real Men Cook. I use my son because when we were at that first Real Men Cook that took place at the Museum of Science and Industry, and Devorah, my esteemed colleague and lifelong friend, she recruited me to be part of the celebration of Black men. And we have to be a little bit honest here, Yvette, because that first Real Men Cook was not called Real Men Cook. It was called Men Who Cook.
Yes.
And she brought me on board and enticed me to be a part of this. And I remember being there with my son. He was just born. He was about to turn 1 year old at that time. And so I look at how old he is to judge how long I've had an association with Real Men Cook, but it is an extraordinary opportunity for me to be here, not only with all of our distinguished panel members, but also a very, very good and close friend of mine, Devorah.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And Devorah Crable has been my dear friend for some time. I remember being a groupie. You guys both hosted the Ebony Jet Showcase, and I met both of you guys, and I was like, I know the host, I know Deborah Crable, and I know Darryl Dennard. I'm just going to ask her to come to lunch with me, and I'm going to share this idea. And she immediately signed on. And what we had is women that recruited men to cook for Father's Day, and the men would buy the food, cook the food, and give it away as a demonstration of the generosity of Black men, but also because we were raising money for nonprofits. And ironically, the Chicago Food Depository was one of the people that got our first $5,000 donation as the proceeds of the event, as well as DuSable Museum and the Life Source, the blood bank. But Chicago Food Depository is now our partner, and they pay us to help distribute food and expand the food stability mission of both our organizations. So that's what happens if you stay in the game 32 years.
Yep.
Well, listen, for 22 of those years, without missing 1 year in between, I donated food and my Father's Day. I never celebrated a Father's Day without doing Real Men Cook in terms of service to the community.
And I think until your children began to have children, and they needed you to be a grandfather, in the grandfather space, that probably would have continued to this day. But I really thank you for that, Darryl, and thanks for the anecdotal, input that you just gave us, because we have stories, and we probably could have done a show with just you, and maybe we will around Thanksgiving when we do Real Men Cook for the holidays. We want to hear more. But it's my real opportunity to introduce you to Ms. Devorah Crable. She is president and CEO of NSD Global, LLC. And she has had a full service marketing and media services and production company that provides clients with image solutions, high impact marketing strategies, and dynamic messages that enable clients to transform or enhance their evolving success profiles. Her award-winning career as a broadcast journalist included engagements with WRC News Talk Radio in the nation's capital, WVON Radio here in Chicago, WLS Talk Radio, both of those in Chicago, as a matter of fact. And most remember her as the first woman host of, and that was groundbreaking, of the Ebony Jet Showcase produced by Johnson Publishing Company. She collaborated with MOBE as a past president of the National Association of Market Developers to advance the importance of the Black consumer market, and utilizes training from her McCormick Theological Seminary experiences to elevate power consciousness to create a world that we all desire. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our co-moderator, Ms. Devorah Crable.
Well, Yvette, it's always an honor and a privilege to join you and to support you. And as Darryl has shared, we do have fond memories of those very first years of Real Men Cook. And I remember running around with all the ladies, trying to get the centerpieces for the tables, making sure the guys had all their pots and the pans and the utensils. And it was just big fun. It was just an extraordinary good time. And you created such an amazing community. And probably more importantly is that the celebration of Black men that you have created, a space for that, in particular for us to elevate and celebrate Black men in particular. It did not exist before Real Men Cook, and you are the one who have really conscientiously branded that whole movement and concept. And we just thank you, and nod to you, hats off to you, you and Kofi. It's just an amazing thing that you all have really, really created and have moved forward for over 32 years now.
Thank you very much. And our son, Rael Jackson, is really leading the movement. What we're doing this year with major sponsors like Lowe's, the Fresh Market, BET, Heinz, the Black Star Project, and we could go on and on, is Rael's vision for taking Real Men Cook to the next level. So I'm not supposed to be talking about Real Men Cook. We're talking about real men. And
real men.
And real men love the men we love and how they roll, like Darryl, as a father and grandfather. So it's time for me to go. I'll be on at the end of the show to wrap up and to share about what will be happening in the future. But I thank you, and I thank our panelists this evening. And to our audience, thank you for indulging us in this conversation about such an important milestone event that they say has changed the way Father's Day is celebrated.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Yvette.
Thank you.
And again, I want to thank all of you who are joining us. And there's an opportunity for you to join this conversation via the chat room. So feel free to enter your comments, your questions there. And we will certainly address those questions as they do come up. Darryl, I do have to acknowledge you because you mentioned the kids, little D and Autumn. And I remember pushing them around in baby carriages. And here we are, a generation later, and now they're the grown folks pushing. They aren't even pushing baby carriages; they have grown kids of their own.
Yes, they are. Hopefully, they won't have to push. Hopefully, they won't have to push us in carriages too soon.
Well, there you go. There you go. But we have some extraordinary guests that are joining us for this conversation on this evening about the value of men in the family, the value of men in our lives, particularly fathers. We're talking about fathers and their role in our lives. And we're covering the full spectrum, the wonderful men such as my colleague, Darryl Dennard. We have a senior voice, more senior than ours. All of us are senior citizens now, right? But more seasoned with rich wisdom, that will be joining us as well with his daughter, who is just as eloquent. And now we're in a season where we're talking about non-traditional families. All kinds of things have changed over the past 20 years that have really shifted our consciousness and understanding of what family is. So we will also be taking a look at those non-traditional families. And the gentleman joining us for that conversation and his insight is George Smith, who is CEO of GHS Entertainment, and he's also owner and administrator of Personal Care Health Service. He used to be based in New York. He went and migrated back home to Dallas, Texas, where he initiated this exciting project, the first of its kind, through his company, GHS Entertainment. And it was the first for Dallas, called the Circuit Party Festival held in the park. And so he'll be telling us a little bit more about that as well. But it is the first outdoor circuit party held in a park for the LGBTQ community to come together beyond the color and ethnicity line and just celebrate as a community. And that whole event is free and open to the community. Dr. George, we welcome you to this conversation. And what is the circuit training piece all about?
Thank you for having me. First of all, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
The circuit party is a EDM house party that you would usually find in our counterparts community. And over the years, the environment, has become very integrated with Blacks, Hispanics, and stuff like that. And so here in Dallas, I just had an idea that it was time to do an event that bridged all of the ethnicities in the LGBTQ family. When you're already in a sub-market, so to speak, in a dissected area, you don't need to dissect yourself even more. So I just felt like this was something that needed to be done, and it was the first of its kind. I decided to sponsor it through my company, and it's community giving back to community.
Well, we certainly thank you for all that you've done and can't wait to hear more from you. And we have a father and daughter team joining us here this evening as well. And again, the wisdom voice joined us with Mr. Riggs and his daughter, Ericka. And both of them hail from the marketing and public relations arena. The apple I see didn't fall far from the tree. Darryl, I know that you and Mr. Riggs have a special association. I'm going to start with his daughter, and I'm going to give you the honor of introducing Mr. Riggs. Ericka Riggs, you've been all over the place, Miss Ericka, and have really launched your career and developed it in many different ways, starting off doing everything from hair products and working with in the radio and television industry as well, and entertainment over in Los Angeles, and even in New York, and working with Uniworld in advertising. And so you and your father have a very special relationship, and I'm sure that you learned a lot from him in terms of making your career choices. How did he influence you?
Wow, we don't have enough time.
I know.
Well, first of all, my initials are ESR and his initials are ESR. So that's a special bond. But I'm also the middle child to two sisters who are probably so envious at this moment, because my father has been such an influence to all of us. But for me, I always had the extroverted people gene. And I love to listen to my father tell stories of who he was growing up. I was just asking before we got on today, what was the cologne that he used to wear back in the day when he would leave early in the morning? No matter what time they came in, he would come in, he would kiss us, and he would leave. And I just remember always remembering the smell, and it was Aramis. So influence is not only, what do they call that, aromatic, right? Aromatherapy. What is it called?
Aromatherapy.
Yeah. I can smell that, and I can go back to the time when I watched my father, who was a consummate father, but he was also an amazing husband to my mom, and how they have been, the love story that they have is also very influential to me in who I am as a business person. I go in, I call him all the time, Dad, what would you do?
Perfect.
So.
Well, you were lucky. My father was a military guy, so I didn't have aromatherapy in the morning. I heard, I want to see your feet, the pitter patter feet on the floor. And, it was like up before dawn, and you better have it all together, rocking and rolling. So you got it. You got the easy way in. I may have had it a little rougher. But we'll defer to Father Riggs. Mr. Riggs, it's an honor and a privilege, Earl Riggs, to have you join us as well. The 25 years of experience in corporate management. Darryl, I will transfer over to you.
Sure. As you mentioned, Deborah, he has some 25 years in corporate management in marketing and sales corporations with a demonstrated skill in management training, as well as marketing, sales, public relations, and human relations, as well as business development. So it is, as you said, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Some of his honors include the Outstanding Achievement Award for Major Corporation Representatives presented by the Black United Fund of Washington, D.C., where he did a lot of his work. He also received the Distinguished Award for Excellence at the Howard County Foundation for Black Educational and Cultural Achievement. Some of his board affiliations include the United Negro College Fund, the Board of Directors of Next Generations, Chairman of the UNCF, the Lou Rawls Telethon of Stars, which Deborah, you and I participated in
years ago.
many years, indeed, as well as co-founder of the Howard County Foundation for Black Educational and Cultural Achievement, as well as national president of Washington Lincoln Alumni Association of Dallas, Texas, and he is the fundraising chairperson for the DC Metro Texas College Alumni Association, as well as being a graduate of Texas College. And he excelled while he was there, not only in terms of being on the honor roll, but also in football and baseball. That is, of course, Mr. Earl Riggs. And
Yes.
definitely a trailblazer and somebody I'm sure that all of his family members are proud of. Earl, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And just very quickly talk about your journey from the collegiate to the corporate world.
Well, thank you, Darryl. And I just want you all to know it's an honor for me to share this evening with MOBE. When my daughter asked me to be a part, and I readily accepted because I grew up with these young ladies. I won't say they grew up with me, because I had to learn to be a parent growing up with 3 daughters, lovely daughters that I love immensely. My track record coming out of college into the work world was first, I was kind of fishing for really who I really was. I tried different things, but I remembered as I was growing up, when the kids in the neighborhood had to raise money for people who were injured or what have you in my neighborhood, I was always the guy that could come back with the most money. I was always the guy who was not afraid to ask for what I wanted. So I discovered that I was really a salesman. I had gone to school for something else, but life came easy to me asking for what I wanted. So I became involved with finally the company that fitted with who I was. And that was RJR Nabisco. It was RJR Nabisco then. It was RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company. And it was an experience that felt like a hand in a glove. It was easy to me. It allowed me to grow through many levels. And I left Dallas, Texas when my career started. I went into St. Louis, Missouri, interlevel management. From there to Maryland, the Washington, D.C. market. From there to the Philadelphia market, the New York market. And I retired back in the D.C. market as regional sales director, VP. And all of those things was enjoyable to me because I had 3 daughters that was running with me. And it gave me an opportunity to teach them a lot of the things that I was learning myself. And with that, I'm so proud of Ericka, my middle daughter. I'm proud of all of them. But Ericka has been always a challenge to me, picking my brain,
Ericka, you know, I got to ask about the big challenge. There are a few things I will have to jump in here. There are a lot of connections here. We have Dallas in the house a couple of times. Mr. Riggs, I don't know if you recognize my background. I grew up in Columbia, Maryland. And I chose as a background the back of our house. And you can see our house all the way across on the other side of the lake there. And my father, you may have known him, Lieutenant Colonel Wilbur Crable. He did a lot of diversity work and inclusion work in Howard County years ago.
Sure.
But you all probably were peers. But I have to go back to the Ericka question here. What made her such a big challenge? And let me also preface my position here tonight as well. I know nothing about birthing or raising children. Okay. So my curiosity is pure and genuine. So when it comes to raising girls, and Ericka was a particular challenge, what made her such a great challenge?
Well, my wife says that Ericka was a spitting image of her father. I was a rascal growing up, and Ericka was a little rascal. Ericka was little boy came to my door one day and says, "Can Ericka come out and play football with us?" I said, "You're talking about my daughter, man. What are you talking about?" He said, "But she's the best running back we got." And that's what I was, a running back. But Ericka was persistent and being successful and achieving the goals and objectives that she had set for herself. And that just really made me feel good, because those were the things that I tried to mold into my three daughters. You know, there's 10 things that I used to lay on them about, you know, appearance and confidence and being brave enough to be who you are and to say the things that need to be said, good follow through, and all of these things. It was always a pleasure, because I had these three beautiful daughters that I wanted to prepare to go out into the world. And I'll tell you, I'm very pleased to be able to even speak about the experience that I had doing those things with my daughters.
And I was challenged because I went off script.
We did.
And I bet father did too, right? You learned that from him as well.
Yes, absolutely. I had to be a disruptor.
There's nothing wrong with that. And Dr. Smith, I want to bring you into the conversation, because the reality is what we're talking about tonight is the value of Black fathers. As a gay Black man, discuss for me your journey into fatherhood and why it was important for you to be a father.
Well, I think the first thing is that when you have someone who lives in their truth and they have children, is to understand the origin of it. I was married. You know, I had the normal life that any middle American, African American family. We went for the child. I went to undergrad, I went to grad school, I went to get a PhD, I went to get a law degree. I'm in a fraternity, a proud member of a Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. So yeah, I was the regular guy. I was married. My ex-wife was Miss Black Universe. So yeah, I did a regular life. But in that process, I realized that something wasn't right. I was living in expectation of other people. Everyone had a vetted interest in my success, because I was the first one in my family to go to college, the first one in my family to graduate from college, the first one to be financially successful. So everyone had a vetted interest in my success, and everyone had a vetted interest in me being the trophy. But no one had a vetted interest in who I was and what I was suffering with at the time. And came to a point where my marriage wasn't working. It's simply, I got married at a young age. I didn't have a good example of what marriage was, and didn't know how a marriage works, because I come from a single mother household. And you know, you can't create something that you've never seen or don't have a recipe for. So it was just a disaster. Two young kids decided we're going to get married, and then we ended up having a child. So at this point now, I'm a father, and I'm a man who has to make the decisions of what type of father I'm going to be. And I remember when my son was born, I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm not going to be perfect, but I guarantee you I'm going to be the best father that I can be. And I'm going to be to you what my father wasn't to me. And that's, you know, that's that's what guided me. My sexuality has never come in play to my son, because for me, raising him, I want to raise him to be a man. And being a man is not about the sexuality of a person or their sexual prowess. It's about how they interpret life and their responsibilities and how they maneuver through life. So when that conversation comes up, I just really never know how to approach it, because for him, he didn't know any difference. He just knows me as dad. And I made a purpose in the place where I was dating that I didn't mess my lifestyle with his lifestyle. Because I figured, you know, him growing up, him having to do the regular things in life was complicated enough without my stuff. So I put my stuff on the back burner for him and knew that there was time later on in life.
How old was he? I'm curious to know, how old is he now, and how old was he when you had that conversation?
My son is now 24 years old. He's 6'5", my twin.
All righty.
We were, like, I got divorced from my ex-wife when my son was an infant. I think he was less than 6 months.
So your son is from your ex-wife?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The only reason I say that is because there are a lot of gay men that have married their partner or married their husband, and they end up having children later. So you actually had a child. And it's important for us to differentiate here.
You're absolutely right. So I would consider myself an older model. I'm not one of the new models. Of what the non-traditional family is. I came from a traditional situation, not understanding and not being in the place of living my truth, because I didn't know my truth, to be honest with you.
So I have
wasn't right.
I have two questions for both of you, and Darryl, I'll ask for you to speak into this first, and then I'm going to come back to the Riggses here as well. But Dr. Smith, you said yourself, you grew up in a household without a father.
Yes.
It was a single mother, and you didn't have an example. Darryl, you had challenges coming up as well, in terms of having your father present with you throughout your childhood. So there might be some conversation there, some discoveries that we might find in that conversation between the two of you.
Yeah, and I think it would be a little disingenuous to try to connect not having a father figure with, you know, someone being gay.
I wasn't making that connection. Not at all. The connection is just not having a father figure to offer him an example of what being a father would look like.
Well, you know, my father and mother dated, and when they were in high school in Harlem, and they were literally 17 years old. And then my mother had me. She couldn't go to her graduation because she was too embarrassed being pregnant at the time. And then we had my sister, who's a year and a half younger than I. And then about a year and a half after that, my father married my mother, and we had another sister. In that, I think that he did his best. And this is something that we have to talk about the reality in terms of trying to be a Black father with regard to all of the vicissitudes and trauma and experiences that go into being a Black man in America over the last 30, 40 years. And I know Mr. Riggs can speak to that. And so what happened is that, you know, he did the best he could. You know, he and my mother never separated, but, you know, my father wasn't there. And my mother had pretty much the responsibility of trying to rear a very incorrigible young Black man and direct him, along with my grandmother and great-grandmothers and my grandmothers on both my paternal as well maternal sides. But the thing is that I did receive that nurturing as well as nurturing from the community at large. And like you, Dr. Smith, I was the first one in my extended family to graduate and to attend college. And so I understand all of that pressure that goes into that. And I think that it's important for me. I knew, for my father being somewhat of a player, I knew that was something I really didn't want to do. And so, you know, when I made the commitment to get married 42 years ago, it was something that I was extremely committed to, and more importantly, to be not an absentee father to my children.
You know, it's very interesting because I'm glad to hear that story, and thank you for sharing that. You know, for myself, my father was in the military, and growing up, he had served 2 tours in Vietnam, 2 tours in Korea. So he essentially was an absent father. So when you paint the portrait of what the ideal family looks like and why the father figure wasn't there, there's so many different things that we have to consider. And I never felt at a time that it was something that was missing, because the narrative was, you know, he is taking care of you, and we were always well taken care of in his absence. But Mr. Riggs, you lived through all of that. What I experienced with my father being in the military, I'm sure you witnessed among your peers growing up, many different kinds of scenarios. How were you able to shape and mold your way of being a good father in the midst of what your daughters were exposed to and what was happening around you with possibly even your peers?
Well, thank you. I was blessed and fortunate to have a father and a mother that I grew up with. My father, as you know, I'm the senior flavor in this meeting here today. My father was born in 1898.
Wow.
He was not an educated man. He had some schooling, but he was a wise man. He was a hard worker. He and my mother had a very good teamwork, working deal together. And he was present in my life all the way. And he taught me some things that I really had to grapple with growing up, because he came from an era where Black men had to be very polite to white people, even young white people. A little story real quickly. I went over to get some money to go to the Fair Park, State Fair of Texas, and went to his job. And his boss's son, who was my age or less, came through and something, and he called him Mister. And it upsetted me to no end. Mm. And I said, Dad, you don't have to do that. You know, that boy is not, shouldn't be. And he walked me off with his hand on my shoulder like he would, because like I said, I was a rascal, I was a fireball. And he said, I do what I do, so you won't have to do what I do. Mm. He said, I want you to chew on that while you're at the fair, and we'll talk about it later. And as I matured, I understood. He did whatever he had to do so he could provide for his family. And it motivated me to do the things that he was pushing into my life: education, as an athlete, be the best that you can be, give it the nourishment that it needs so you won't be the last one in line, all of those things. And that's what I used growing up, to the point that I made sure that I followed his lead, the script that he laid out before me. Because, as I said, he was always there. Going to church, my father was in the choir. Although he had cars, we would walk to church. We lived in a community. It was, you know, community living, because most Black people lived in the same community. So it molded me to be a caregiver. It molded me to be the best that I could be. It molded me to prepare myself so that I didn't have to bend, I didn't have to bow. And when it was time to push, I had no fear in pushing. Those are the things that I passed on to my children. And if you know Ericka, you know, she learned it very well. So just being with a father in the house that was involved and always present You know, as an athlete, he was always there to cheer me on. I could count on it. Not only in high school, in college. You know?
Mr. You know,
I want to interject right quick because I think it's very important.
Go ahead, Dr. Smith.
To address the question to me, and it's hanging on the part of, I hear what you're saying about the gay stuff, but when you have a gay representative on there, it's very careful. You got to be very careful that we close all loose ends to the subjects. So we're talking about the absence of a father, and we haven't got to the point about the perspective from a gay perspective, from my perspective. And we don't want to leave people hanging, and we do want to get the full story out there, because often more is suggested and more is just guessed upon. And today I'm here to represent the answers. So I want to make sure that I do my community justice and we get the information out.
So let me offer you that opportunity right now to present the answers. That's why I had asked initially in terms of your journey into fatherhood.
Well, yes. Well, when she proposed the question, I didn't get a chance to give the answer to the question before we went to the next section. So now I just want to address it. Well, being a single father myself, but not having a father, you know, I think we have to be careful when we use that term, because for me, I didn't have a father in the household, but I had a strong male figure in my life. I had my grandfather. And if we're honest, as African Americans in our family structure and stuff, more is caught than taught with our children. So what I saw was a strong man who took care of his family. I saw a Black man who never worked for anybody. He was always independently employed. He had several trades and crafts. So we never saw him go to punch in. He was the clock. And I can remember growing up, by the time I went to college, I went to Prairie View, which is the college is great for first generation college students. Being considered, you know, coming from the hood, so to speak, Studewood, there was a couple of things I didn't know. And I didn't know it not because of the ignorance of the world. I didn't know it because of the greatness of my grandfather. I didn't know what a mortgage was because we never had one. Our houses were paid for cash. I didn't know about financing a car because he didn't go borrow money. He simply wrote a check for the car. My grandmother got a brand new car every other year. So we get in school and I'm talking to other kids and stuff, and they're talking about these things. I'm like, our house is paid for. You know, we have a couple of lots and stuff like that. So for me, watching my grandfather take care of my grandmother, be the man for his 3 daughters, because he didn't have any sons, he had 3 daughters, and he was a very stern man with his grandsons. I can remember I had a 76 Monte Carlo Chevrolet, and the water pump broke. Now, one of my grandfather's trades were he was a mechanic and he had a mechanic shop. Now, it would be easy for me to drive that car like I wanted to. Hey, Pops, water pump broke. Can you help me out? Can you fix it for me? This man was such a relentless person to make sure that you understood your responsibility. He made me get up under that car and he instructed me of how to take that water pump off and how to change it. Now, the story for me is I always knew I was going to be Dr. Smith in some form or fashion. I had a dream for my life, and God had a pattern for me because I stumbled into corporate America at 16. So I said to him, well, no, when I get grown, you know, I'm going to be able to afford somebody to do it. He said, that may be great. He said, but the fact is, you need to know how to do it yourself to make sure they're doing it right. So again, when you have these figures, so we have a community, and just because the father is not there, that doesn't mean that you're not getting it, you know, because of what I saw for him and what he did. And now he never set me down and say, you do this and you do that. But what he did, he made me work hard. He made me understand the value of a dollar. And he made me understand that a man, if he want to eat, he has to work. And with that, you know, it flowered everything that I had in me and that would come along, because I got a job in high school, one of the first Black students working for Shell Oil Company. So again, a Black hood student, I'm going to work every day, 16, one Shell child down in Houston, Texas, and I'm surrounded by corporate America at a very early age. And it changed my trajectory. So I decided to go to college. And then when I started to really understand how corporate America can work and how it can be, then I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur like my grandfather. I said, you know, I don't want to punch the clock. I want to be the clock. And so for me, you know, it just gave me the inspiration and stuff to do it. Again, I think I'm an older model, like a Model T when it comes to the gay stuff, because my sexuality does not have to go before me. I think my sexuality is my truth. And I wear it like my pendant on my necklace is either out when I want it to be or it's in when I want it to be, but it definitely doesn't go before me. So I just want to be, you know, very transparent when we talk about this, and we have this, you know, this representation of gay, because right now in Hollywood and everywhere else, gay is the new orange. And, you know, and so it's such a cliche now, to have gay this, gay that on television and stuff. Because my background as well as TV, I've worked and produced shows and stuff like that. And you see all of this, everybody's rushing to this gay stuff. So I want to make sure that with the seat that I sit in the seat of truth, transparency, and I sit in the seat of the reality of what happens for a Black gay man. And one of the things I don't always tell, I had a reality show, and the biggest thing about the reality show was that I was a Black man, I was a father, I was educated, but I was gay, and my life was not what people thought it was. And it was 5 years successful on YouTube with 10 million hits. So I just want to make sure that we have.
I'm going to tell you something, to try to judge a book by its cover, we couldn't do so with you. That's the reality. The fact is, you got your black shirt on, you look kind of svelte there, and you got your chain out. And I don't think that most people would assume who you are or your sexuality there.
Right.
So, but what is important is that we would be dismissive of the reality in terms of what we're going through right now. If when we talk about the value of Black fathers, that not only do we undervalue the importance of Black fathers, but we have a dearth of Black fathers in our community. And what does that mean, Dr. Smith, and then Mr. Riggs, in terms of talking about the reality that we don't have enough Black fathers, regardless of being substitute fathers, taking care of the children that they help produce?
Well, I think the first issue, we don't have enough appreciation. We don't have enough positivity. We don't have enough spotlights on the fathers that are doing. So when you look at certain things, you see the negativity. There's a new show on YouTube. What's not YouTube, but the Netflix.
Netflix. Okay.
I had a big issue with the Upshaws. It was Mike
Upshaws, yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite comedians. But the premise of that show of a deadbeat dad trying with all these kids out there, and even though he's doing it with love, it's a negative connotation, period. So I call it spade a spade. As an entertainment lawyer, I understand y'all got to make y'all money, but this is another assassination of the Black male. So when we allow that and let the ratings go through the roof and we watch it and support it, we are creating our own problems, because we do have Black fathers out there that are doing stuff. But when are the last time they were highlighted? We had Bill Cosby's. So then you know what we did with him in the end. So now this show is going through the roof and everybody's saying, well, he's trying and stuff like that. I said, but it's a negative situation. He is a deadbeat dad that never shows up on time, and they know it, and he's still trying to redeem himself. So yet again, we're feeding this out there to ourselves, and we're accepting it. So I was a good father. I have friends that are good fathers. So when is the last time we saw an expose or a show about that? So the first thing is we need to change the narrative.
Okay.
So we don't change the narrative.
I was thinking we're moving to the same thing. I want to move with that too, because and this is for Mr. Riggs, because everyone on this panel, they have moorings in the entertainment industry on one level or another, with advertising even. So the question is that what do we need to have in place? How do we shift that narrative through the media, through advertising? Because on the flip side of the Upshaws, and I watched it all during Memorial Day weekend, would be a show like Blackish that I also watch on a regular basis, and I think gives some very strong substantive images of Black men and family life. But from each of our panelists, and Ericka, please jump in here as well with your background in advertising. What do we need to be planting in terms of the messaging? What do we need to be seeing in our major media that might move the needle in reframing how we think and view family, Black family in particular?
Let me start for a second.
Sure, right.
My dad said something the other day. We have conversations all the time. We're in a multi-generational home, so we talk. And he said, I was telling him that he shouldn't tell people they need to be tough, that maybe they need to be more hardy. And he really had a problem with that, because he feels like there's value to the older wisdom that people were taught. And he feels there's a disconnect between how we're now trying to give people and give young people motivation by curating these gentle words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have this conversation all the time, because I'm the single mother of a 17-year-old. And I said to him, I think sometimes it's okay to go to the 2.0 version, but I do also like and this is what I think is so valuable, is that we live in between I knew my grandfather, right? So I have that experience. I have my father's experience. So I have this wealth of generational wisdom that we are passing along to my daughter, even. And I think, again, where do we need to be more positive? I think we need to shirk this notion that everything new is right. Because when I look at the music that my daughter listens to, it's different if I listen to it, because I know that Meg the Stallion is just getting paid, but she's also putting out there poison in this industry. How I don't see that as being a symbol of strength or feminism, that you can talk about the P word and this, that, and the other. Because I have a 17-year-old, but I like the fact that I have my father who can come back and have that conversation. And one of the things that he always told us was about our integrity. So I'm gonna leave it there, because as a woman, as a woman who's been in the industries that often we are, we have, how it is.
Yes.
Beautiful woman in the world has to make sure that they are more than just the beauty, but they are definitely substance. And I want to say the value to me that my father has been to me is his ability to really cultivate that understanding in myself.
Well, one of the good things about a panel like this or programs like this is because, for real, one of the biggest problems we have as African Americans is the fatherless homes. And there are fathers who are not in the home that still represent and support, but there are so many that just disappear. And in my experience, going through the corporate world and going through the voluntary things that I do, I have seen so many lost kids. When I was a sales rep, beginning sales rep with R.J. Reynolds, I used to go around to all of these stores and what have you to do what I had to do. And there was always a group of guys hanging around. They call them winos or druggies. And I don't know what made me do it, but I would give them a couple of minutes of my time. I had sampled cigarettes I could give them. And I would ask them, how did you get here? What happened? And they would tell me. And if I tell you that 70% of what I heard had to do with a relationship with a wife or girlfriend or whatever, I mean, some of these guys had college educations but had given up. So there was the void. Now, when I was growing up, in my community, there were quite a few fatherless homes. Well, what really made me feel good about what my father did, he kind of served as a father to those guys who didn't have homes. Mm-hmm. And because my brother and I were good athletes and we were pretty tough, we fought everybody who needed to be fought. They would gather at my home. And my father and mother, as poor as we were, we didn't know that we were poor because there was always enough food. We could always use his little car to do the things that we had to do. And I have friends now that, my age and older, that talk about what my father and mother meant to them. So there are a lot of kids who don't have fathers in the home who will adopt someone else's father if that father figure is really a caring, loving parent, because if you're all of that, you will help someone else.
Yeah, and like Dr. Smith said, the grandfather, we need to celebrate
Yes.
we need to celebrate the Black grandfathers
That's
out
right.
here as well. Because I'll tell you, my daughter, I'm just so thankful and blessed to have a father and parents actually who have been able to step in and be that for my daughter as well.
You know, our time is getting ready to run a little bit short. I just wanted to focus this and have you speak to this, Dr. Smith, in terms of with the limited time we have remaining. And that is, what is it that you believe that our politicians, our influencers, and the entertainment industry, as well as the church, need to do to change this narrative with regard to the value of Black fathers?
Right now, absolutely nothing. I think we need to start because we make up those people. So the first thing is we need to call a thing. So we always talking about the Black fathers and stuff like that. Let's talk about we can't have Black fathers without Black mothers. So let's teach our daughters to pick better men, better situations, to vet better. So let's start there because I want to shake the table. So the first thing is we got to have a story about how do we look at ourselves and how do we view ourselves and how do we make a better choice in life and generations. That starts with a conversation. So for me, with my son, I always tell my son, you have value and you can't give that value away to anybody else. So when a young woman comes up to you, she needs to vet you and she needs to be worthy of your name, your time and everything. Because just because she's offering don't mean that it's good. So if you don't start speaking value and changing the narrative for men and for women, then you're going to have this perpetual image. Because we always talk about the stories of what's happening, but let's talk about this. There's a lot of Black men who would be better fathers if the mothers would let them. You go through a divorce, they'll use a child. So at that point, you have all these variations. So what we have to do is start at the core, and we have to do better and hold ourselves responsible and stop looking at the athletes and everybody else, because the athletes can't do anything better than we can do. They come on TV once a week. We're in the house every day. We're around the kids every day. We're depending on to do something that we should be doing.
We're moving and living through this whole Black Lives Matter movement. Inside of that, do you think that lesson of self-value will bubble up? Because if we're asking everyone else to value us, does it not first have to be a self-valuation where I value me?
Right. And I think, I always use words as term of arts as a lawyer. So we have to define these things, because what you say for value may not be for value for me. So we have to give a common definition that we can all agree on for what value is, first of all, and to have a conversation that works for everybody. So my son, he was about maybe 16 when all of the craziness started to happen. And I would say to him, I need you to come home today. I need you to come home. A run is better than a fall any day, because we live in a world right now that we are living off the sins of not keeping accountability for things, because we allow so many things to happen when our kids integrate. My son could not sag and wear his pants. That was not allowed. And I said to him, the first time he did it, was like 12 years old, I said, do you know where that came from? You know what you're saying? That was a signal in jail to tell somebody that you was available. Are you available? Is that what you're saying? No, Dad. I said, then pull your pants up. It's not allowed around me.
Yeah.
I said, if I see it again, I'm gonna hit you in the esophagus, period. So we have to take a stand. So we have to change the narrative for us. We can't keep having this big broadcast in the absence of fathers. But let's sometimes talk about the presence of fathers. And if the father's not present, there are very many reasons that he's not present. I mean, he's left, because when you say the absence of Black father, that sounds like an eternity of a black hole, a Black man, and it's not all the case. We have our system that is rigged against Black men. They're incarcerated. Once they get into that incarceration system, they don't get out. You have the situation of frustration for Black men. I'm a Black man with 4 degrees. I worked in corporate America, and they never gave me a fair chance. So I got frustrated, because I'm like, you told me to go to school and get the degrees. I got 4 of them. I'm in the top 2%, a PhD and a JD, and I don't get the jobs. I don't get the promotions. So I figured out a long time ago.
What do you attribute that to? What do you attribute that to, George?
I attribute that to the system that we live in, and we don't call a thing. So for me, this process doesn't work for me. So I got to create my own process. So I created GHS.
In that process, let's talk in layman's terms. In that process, what are the elements that the people that are watching right now can use and take advantage of?
Right now, what people need to understand, first of all, you got to bet on yourself. If you're not willing to gamble on yourself, then you're not in the race. So I worked in healthcare. I wanted to work in entertainment. So when healthcare didn't treat me right, the job that I was doing for the hospital, making $1 million, I saved my money and took my life savings and my teacher retirement, and I started the company that I was doing for them. If I can do it for y'all, I can do it for myself. And they gave me economic freedom. And then I started taking chances on myself. I have opened up about 175 companies. Now, few of them have worked, but it took me right. So what I did is I learned a long time ago, I read a story about Sam Walton, how he was one of the biggest failures, and he failed at everything. Walmart was his thing that he got to when he's like 47 years old. But by the time he got to Walmart, he had failed at everything. Now, if you know your history, Walmart is the blueprint for what we know of these big chain stores that they didn't exist. But because he failed at 46 things before, he was able to create Walmart. Because transportation, he had failed at a trucking company. Marketing, he had failed as a salesman. So he had failed at everything, but he didn't fail. He was training. He was getting the essential things he needed to create that thing that he was destined to do. And Walmart's going to live on before it's all. So the thing about it is you got to believe in yourself. You got to invest in yourself. So when corporate America wasn't giving me to just do that I needed with my credentials, so I took my credentials and I built a house for them. Now, I'm not going to say that it's easy, because when you're the top of the pyramid and you're the clock and everybody's depending on you, you got to be accountable.
Accountable. Dr. Smith, let me hitchhike on to what you mentioned earlier about the man and the woman, and how it's really dependent upon them working together. My wife and I have been married 61 years.
That's a blessing.
And I have always been asked everywhere I have gone, how did it happen? How did you all, make this thing together? And the one thing that I mention along with love for the lady that I'm married to, I said that she's my friend. She was always my friend, the woman that I loved. Then she became the mother of my children. And all of those things was like cementing that relationship together. Today, what I see, some of the young people, the first argument they have, they're gone. They're gone. And which means that the selection process that you're using for a running mate, someone to grow old with, someone to be a father of some children and a husband with, is not a good one. You need to stop with the affectionate look of beauty, and this is what I want to do, and be, like Dr. Smith said, you need to really find out who this person is.
Right. What's your value?
Learn something about a decision that you're going to make, because the decision to marry is a very, very important decision, one of the most important you're going to make.
Yeah.
And our young men, I think, need to be more selective, be very careful. And as just Dr. Smith said, and the young ladies need to do the same thing about who they're allowing to come into their life with all of the wonderful things that they're going to come in there with.
Yeah, and the narrative has to stop being the hottest song, right? We always talk about, we are the culture, we create the culture. Really? I didn't create ratchet culture, but it's making people money. I used to work in the music industry. I'm very aware of how people are used, and now who's using who, and how this whole thing is being such a negative effect on our young people. Carter G. Woodson talked about that whole phenomenon, right? He said at some point, you don't have to you don't have to have a law to make people go to the back of the bus. They will argue and fight to get to the back of the bus. Right. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing right now.
And Ericka, the reality is that it's the over influence of what we see on the screen, what we see on YouTube, what we see on Facebook, what we see on IG. And when I think about that, I think about the fact is that we have these sort of conflicting images that go across the screen.
Yes.
You know, we have an image like a Barack Obama in terms of him and Michelle and raising two beautiful kids. And then I hate to put it out there on the real tip, but then you have an image like Nick Cannon, who has 4 children right now that are he's about to be a father of 4 children, or 6 children. I think it's maybe as many as 6 children from 4 different women within a 6-month period. Now, granted, he may have the wherewithal to provide for all of those children. So, I can't disqualify that. But what does that say in terms of the value of Black fathers?
Well, more importantly, Bill, the other
people emulating that behavior, because we see it every day. People saying, well, he's doing it. I can do it like that. I got it like that.
So what do we do to pull in the reins? What do we do to pull in the reins so that we can control that narrative? Now, the folks in Silicon Valley will be the first to tell you, do not get on Facebook, do not do the IG, get off of all that social media, because it is driving and forming our opinions and attitudes about self and our behaviors. How, as fathers, do you pull in the reins and change that narrative? Where does it happen? How does it happen? And what is that message?
Well, I think Dr. Smith is perfectly situated to at least bring some perspective here, being in the entertainment industry.
I think it's one step at a time, and it's one movement at a time. I can remember when my son would, I bought my dream car at 50. Yes, I'm older than 50. Don't look at me, I'm older than 50. I bought my dream car at 50, and he came to the house and he saw it. So he said, "Dad, can I take a picture in it?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, can I back it out?" No. You're not driving my Bentley. Just sit on it. So he took a picture and he posted it on Instagram. And wow, they're gonna go crazy likes. I said, wait a minute. So you took a picture of a car that you can't afford and you don't own to impress somebody on Instagram. I said, let me ask you a question. What does that mean when 100 people likes you? I said, because you do understand when people create this group or barrier, they're really all insecure. They just band together to make you think they're secure, so you feel insecure like them, but they know you feel insecure. So you take it one step at a time. We have to develop a sense of self-worth in men. I'm about to touch on the subject that my community's gonna get upset. I notice a lot of this marriage between guys and these blended families, and in particular in the African-American community, these Black gay weddings become an event. And I'm like, every time I talk to somebody as a lawyer, I said, let me ask you a question. You can get married like straight people, but you can't get divorced like straight people. Did you read the law? And I can tell you 95% of the guys I talk to don't understand. If you get married and you get divorced, it's not the same. When a man and a woman get married and they have to divide property, it's a very strict situation. It's not the same for people of same sex. So again, accountability. Change the narrative, and we have to be responsible, and we have to get out of this thing of fads and what's popular and what's thin. Everybody want to have their wedding on Facebook and all this stuff like that. We have to stop that.
So the vanity, get out of the vanity frame of mind.
Yes, we have to, because just what he said about Nick Cannon, the thing about it is the first thing anybody's going to say, when you have money and you can afford those kids, nobody's going to ever call Nick Cannon a deadbeat dad. But a Nick Cannon with 6, 7 kids, a bustling career, a bunch of money, he's probably got less time than the dad that don't want to be bothered with their kids. But we're not going to say that because Nick Cannon has money. Again, we have to change the narrative for ourselves and stuff. We can't expect somebody else to do the things that we perpetuate. You put a show on, there's a resident, the viewership.
When you boil it down, Dr. Smith and Darryl, people have to come in touch with who they are, period. I compliment Dr. Smith on his success as a businessman and a doctor. Somewhere along the line, he made a commitment to himself of who he was and who he wanted to be and how he wanted to go there. Michael Jackson has that record, A Man in the Mirror. I have spoken with a lot of young men, a lot of groups. I managed a tremendous amount of young people. And the thing that I would talk to them about was about coming in contact with who you really are. Because what I was hearing from them was BS. It was what they had heard, what they saw on TV, but it really wasn't who they were. And I think with the conversations that and I always, after I heard Michael's song, I always encourage young men and young women to that person that you see the first thing in the morning, communicate with that person. You know, make a commitment to that person, because you can't lie to that person, because that's you.
Right.
Who you want to be? How do you want to get there? What is your timetable? Do you love or do you hate? Whatever the deal is, you got to come in contact with it. Those are the basic things. And those of us who know how, those of us who have been successful doing it, need to continue reaching back to try to lend a hand as much as we can.
You know, I just want to, I know we're getting ready to conclude here, but I think that having great images and positive images like you had, Brother Earl, in terms of your father, like you had also Dr. Smith, and also I had in terms of positive male role models. But, when I look at the image, and I'm going to take Devorah back here, we were I believe it was in North Carolina, and I took her over to some sort of thrift store, and I had picked up these two hand puppets. Now, you have to be old to remember what hand puppets are. Hey, you see them?
Yes, yes.
And she remembers this. And the thing that I found extraordinary about this, when, I instantly asked the woman to take them out of the countertop, because I said, wow, that's a hand puppet of a Black college student. And this is a hand puppet of a Black man. He could be a preacher or a grandfather. I don't know what he is. But the fact is that I never saw images like that growing up. And when I turned on the back of these two hand puppets, they were from 1968, Childcraft. And I said that those are the kind of images that our children need to see. They need to see images like Mr. Riggs. They need to see images like Dr. Smith. They need to see images of people that have succeeded against the odds and that understand the value of being a Black father, and take a premise that says that each one of us is going to teach one of us. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
I want to say one thing, and I really appreciate you guys for the support and everything like that. My journey was my choice in terms of education and all that stuff and the degrees that I have. But I really want to make a point that I know that we celebrate excellence, but we have to celebrate excellence in the right way all the time. So just as well as my accomplishments, I feel like we need to celebrate more for a person a Black man who goes to work every day, who's kept a job for 15 years, whether he has a title or not, but he has a commitment, he has an ethic to himself. We need to celebrate those as well. We celebrate the big things, and I think it's great. Getting a PhD and a JD was not easy. And as you said, I did make a commitment to myself. But my commitment was for what I wanted and what I thought success was and happiness. And it all comes at a cost to all of us, for wherever we land on the spectrum. So there are some people, they say the cost for this, I don't want, but I'll do the cost for that. And if he goes to work every day and he works at a Popeyes and he's a manager and he chooses that career and he does it well and with integrity, he's successful.
Yes.
You know what? That reminds me of what Dr. Smith, what our former boss told us, John H. Johnson, years ago. He said, I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care how smart you are, how well you have traveled the world, how many people that you know. You will never be as smart as a wise old man.
Into that.
And I would just like to say, let's bring back the culture of father knows best.
I love that.
So let's create that. Let's recreate that. And I think that embodies everything that we've been talking about here today in terms of reinstilling values from our spirituality to recognizing our elders, valuing those elders, establishing core values to live upon that are healthy core values that advance and promote life. So if we can take all those things and embrace them, I think we'll get back on the right track and start seeing more positive images of Black men and more healthy examples of the Black family. But I'm going to turn it back over to Yvette. Yes. I want to thank each and every one of you. Darryl, as always, bam, bam. Lots of love and respect to each and every one of you. Happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
And Ericka, I have to ask this. Did you ever feel like I was supposed to be a boy? You know, that's what they always told me. You were supposed to be a boy. So I
wore my tomboy status with absolute strength, and I still do.
Much respect.
I can put on stilettos, but I can still run you down.
Slug it out.
I can still slug it. You know what I mean, in a very good way. But yes, I love being a girl who can get in there and tumble with all of them.
I told you she was the best running back they had.
I know that's right, and gives you a run for your money. Yvette, again, we want to thank you again for this golden opportunity.
Yes,
to salute Black men and our fathers, and it's just been a rich conversation. I've learned a lot, and it's been edifying. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. It's been great.
Thank you all for having us.
Thank you. You're seeing on the screen our Real Men Charities event. It has been going on every single Father's Day for 32 consecutive years. This Sunday we have set as June 20th, and we are going to do a real event in Atlanta at Centennial Park, a full-blown Real Men Cook. In Chicago, because things didn't open right away, we're doing a smaller event at the venue that our nonprofit owns called The Quarry. But in Atlanta, we'll be at Centennial Park. And live from Centennial Park is our virtual event, where you'll be introduced to an amazing chef, Dennard, who has lots of children, and a wife and a mother-in-law that's involved with his business operations. So you'll see a young, successful man whose program is on Clio TV, which is one of the TV One TV stations. And he's going to moderate that session, and you'll see men live from Centennial Park, not only cooking, but we're going to get a chance to meet their children and see them enjoying a family day together, which is what Real Men Cook on Father's Day is all about. We do want to acknowledge that in a strange year, right after the pandemic, not even opening, knowing if we would open in this 32nd year, we had companies like Lowe's step up to the plate, Lowe's Home Improvement. We had the Fresh Market, which is named the #1 supermarket in the country. We don't even have one in this inner city of Chicago. It's so upscale, but that they could look at our images of Black men representing all fathers and tie into what we're doing is major. In Chicago, University of Chicago Medicine has been with us a dozen years or more. We have Aetna. We always have a men's health and wellness theme in addition to cooking. So the food is the hook. We draw them in, and then we talk about, we've done prostate cancer screenings. We've done hepatitis C screenings. We've done all kinds of things at our event. So we always have health and wellness partners. And we just are very excited about what's happening this year. I want to thank everyone for being on the panel. It's been wonderful. First of all, one of my narratives is that the system, the structural racism has really robbed our children of grandfathers.
Yes.
It has robbed them of grandfathers. It has also robbed our children of that second Social Security check, because Black men die sooner than any other group of men in America. And it is mostly from diseases that come from stress.
Preventable.
And, I'm hoping that, as we say, sometimes MOBE accelerates. I hope we accelerate the process where we don't have to know that a man has been killed tragically to understand what a great father they were. We knew that with Michael Brown. We found out he was a tremendous father, grandfather, had a family life, no matter what he was doing before the tragedy. He had people that loved him. Our men are being only humanized after tragedy. The same thing with George Floyd, that people loved him. loved him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had brothers who were real men who stepped to the plate and just made us cry because their compassion and they're being able to speak about their religion, their faith, their family. We don't get a chance to see that until a Black man is killed, murdered. We've got to remove that narrative and tell the truth. There is a segment that I'd like to recommend to everyone, the myth of the absent African-American father. And it says that just because our men don't get married, and we're in the capitalistic system, our men are not marrying Black women. And mostly because in the capitalistic system, it says if you don't have money, you shouldn't get married. You know, it sort of diminishes love. It makes love so secondary to the relationship. It makes respect so secondary. It minimizes our women, that these men can't marry them without money. I want to salute the man that can't find the job, because Black male unemployment is pretty low, right? Where are you going to work? If you stand up and talk, you're going to lose your job as a Black male, right? So I just want to salute the brother that is the dad at home. You know, as women continue, we keep celebrating the successes of Black women. That means that sometimes the brother has to stay at home, take care of them 1, 2, 3 kids, make sure everybody's off to work, including his wife on time, right? Make sure the homework is done.
It's admirable.
It is admirable, and it's not that unusual. Having done Real Men Cook for 32 years, a lot of the brothers that step up to volunteer is because they become experts at managing their home and their family and what's for dinner every day for the benefit of their healthy growing children. And we could go on and on with this. It says basically that the myth of the African-American males on YouTube is that just because he's not in the home doesn't mean he's connected. And he's not connected. You know, he's taking those babies to, if you go to Chicago and ride the L, which is our, subway, you'll see more men on the L with multiple children, straightening up people's hair and jackets than women. Something has shifted and changed, and we cannot allow these brothers to be invisible. We have to hold them up because they're doing what they're doing out of love, and change how we look at things, because the structure has shown us how to evaluate Black men. We can't allow that to happen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. We have such an opportunity to love our men, to pull the curtain back and show that we love our brothers. They are human, they are wonderful and engaged. Thank you so for being here. I think we're going to have Yvonne tell us about the next segment, or maybe even about what you can do to join us on Fatherhood.
Hey, Yvette, before you do that, don't forget, happy Juneteenth, everyone.
Oh, yes.
Juneteenth, yes.
And let me say that we, I think on our LinkedIn and Facebook page, we have a side-by-side Fatherhood and Juneteenth. And so we're celebrating Juneteenth with the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, which is a Carnegie Hall concert that'll be taking place on Saturday. And all you just have to do is look at their website. And also we're in Atlanta with the Juneteenth celebration in Atlanta as well, both branded with Real Men Cook. And the next day, everybody will be coming to Real Men Cook in those places.
If you're in Dallas, come see me at Reverchon Park on the 20th for my circuit party.
And what is the circuit party? What do we do in the circuit party?
What party? What park is that, Mr. Smith?
Reverchon. Reverchon Park. Yeah, it's at the end of Turtle Creek Park. Reverchon Park is the big park. Yeah, so it's a circuit festival, picnic, dance, and it's just for everybody, LGBTQ, and those of you who support us, come out, and we're just going to have a good, fun day. After COVID, we've been shut up, so let's go to the park and have some fun.
Because when we say circuit, I think I'm going to be doing sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups, and all that.
Circuit, you'll be dancing. You'll be dancing to EDM and good old-fashioned house music.
Great.
All right. Well, happy Father's Day. Thank you so much, Mr. and also Dr. Smith.
Thank you guys.
Well, thank you so much to the entire panel. It has been truly enjoyable. I do want to dedicate next week's programming to my own father, who I lost 1 year ago tomorrow, Delbert or Africa, a political prisoner of 42 years. And definitely I am a daddy's girl, tomboy, just like Ericka, and love him still with all he instilled in me. And all of my hot, spicy recipes come from my father. So that real man did really cook as well. Next Monday, we have MOBE Mondays present Self-Care is Not Selfish, the mind, body, soul connection. We will speak about exercise, nutrition, integrative medicine, establishing a health plan, mental exercises, and mental health. Surely this will be a robust conversation. We hope that all of you will come out to join us at Juneteenth, all of the multiple celebrations. Please support our panelists as well in their endeavors. And we will see you next week for Father's Day weekend in Chicago at the Quarry Event Center, as well as Centennial Park in Atlanta for Real Men Cook Father's Day weekend. Enjoy your evening.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.